Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Right? I don't know, I was about to ask at the back because it really doesn't make any difference where you are, does it? It's weird. The rollout of automatic enrolment is a lengthy process, so why the need to plan early? We know automatic enrolment started in October 2012 with the largest employers, and the rollout progressively down the different sizes of employer until we get to 2018. So that's 6 years. So why the big flap now about making sure that everybody starts planning early? Well, we're now at that point where the small and medium enterprises are starting to stage. This month it's those employers with between 90 and 159 employees that are staging. But awareness of automatic enrolment among the employer community still remains quite scarily low. The pensions regulator has just done some research, and it's them that have said that awareness amongst employers is low. Of those employers who are aware of automatic enrolment, and the small employers, 75% of them say that they are going to be looking for professional advice to help them stage. Of the micro employers, that's 65% that are going to be looking for professional advice. I suspect that that number is lower because really, to be honest, they haven't even thought about what it is that they might need to do. And they are placing a very heavy reliance on that professional advice. Who are they going to be looking to for advice? Well, if we're looking at the small category, 58% of those small employers are going to be looking directly at accountants to give them the advice. When we look at that's of those who are currently aware, and of those micro employers that are aware, 3/4 of them are looking straight to their accountant for advice. And they actually don't have any worries. They are completely confident that they are going to meet all their automatic enrolment obligations, which suggests perhaps that they think that the accountants are going to do most of the work for them. So if we look at what that help that they're looking for is going to be, from an accountant's point of view, what are accountants going to be offering? Well, hardly any accountant has said that they will be helping their clients pick a pension scheme or look for the appropriate software. What accountants have said that they're going to be doing is telling the client when the staging date is, or helping them understand that legislation. And even then, only 1/3 of agents have said that they're going to be doing that. So I suspect that what we've actually got is a big gap in the expectation levels, that the clients think that their accountants are going to do everything for them, and the accountants are thinking, no, I'll show you what you need to do and leave you to get on with it. Thankfully, awareness among the agent community is high about the requirements. 83% of agents know that the pension scheme has to be registered with the appropriate body. So if we have a look then at what the planning needs to be, because we need to start addressing that gap between customer expectation and what is going to actually be delivered to them. That slide there, I'm not going to talk through particularly. This set of slides will be available to you after this session. They'll be available on the website. And there's this slide and another one further down the line called payroll considerations, where you can use it afterwards if needs be, so that you can look to see what are the different areas that you're going to need to cover. It might be all you need to do is hand it over to your client and say that's what you need to think about. But that's what this one is here for. Obvious categories really. Know your staging date. That's the most blindingly obvious one there is, because once you know the staging date, you can work backwards to work out when they need to start doing something. Company to-do list, again, all the different areas. It doesn't matter the size of the company, whether it's a huge one or a small one, there are still certain issues that they need to look at. and the systems down here as well. If you're doing some of the work for the clients, then you need to look at the systems, or it might be that you give that one over to your clients and say, right, this is what the areas you need to look at. We would say that everybody needs a project plan. It might be, as an agent, that you set up a project plan for each one of your clients, even if it's only just to determine how far you are going with each of your clients and how you're going to communicate that to them. Preparing data. We know that because of RTI, a lot of the data was cleansed and put back in order. Keeping it clean is another matter, but it was done. But even some basics, we found that some employers that staged had a big problem because they didn't actually know the sex of a lot of their employees. And for pensions, that's important. For some, it's blindingly obvious. For others, say with a name like Francis or Leslie that can work for either sex, you might not necessarily know which they are, and it can make a difference because automatic enrolment goes to state pension age, and as it stands at the minute, they're not properly aligned yet. Staging. Staging's the start, really. Everyone seems to think, that once they get to staging and they've gone through automatic enrolment, well, then that's it. It's not. It's just the start of the process. For those employees that haven't been automatically enrolled, then the assessment process goes on every single time they get paid, and there's the re-enrollment process. So it's something that does need to be planned for. And then, yes, keeping on doing it. All these things we're going to be talking about in more detail, starting with that one in the top right-hand corner, pension schemes. Procuring a pension scheme is the employer's responsibility. Do employers know that? I know of one particular company because she came to me and talked to me about the problem she's got. She's a payroll bureau who has largely domestic employers, so they're all incredibly small. They don't consider themselves as employers, and they were wanting her, virtually as one, they were wanting her to just register them with Nest. You're my agent, you do it, sort it out, register me with my pension scheme, get me sorted out. She's not allowed to do that. We've been speaking to Nest, but it's not just Nest. None of the pension companies, as far as we know, will allow an agent to register for a pension on behalf of an employer. It's the employer's responsibility. Whether we manage to get that change, whether they look again as we get further down the line and the employers get smaller and smaller, whether they will look at it, who knows. But as it stands at the moment, employers need to know that it's something they have to do. As your clients, have you thought about how you are going to get this message home to them? Because I do know it's hard, no matter how many times you write to them or whatever, they don't take any notice. I know that. They can get advice from an independent financial advisor. They can get advice from the Pensions Advisory Service. We know that there are the three main pension companies that are set up specifically for automatic enrolment, which is Nest, Now and People's Pension. Of course, there are lots of other pension schemes out there and they can all be used for automatic enrolment, but these are the three specifically for automatic enrolment. These conversations need to start now. And why do they need to start now? If it's a very small employer that's not going to be staged until 2017, why do we need to start thinking about it now? I'll show you why. If we look at the numbers involved, that's the gherkin, in case you are wondering, for the you at the back. Business as usual. Before we started with automatic enrolment, there were between 3,000 and 6,000 pension schemes, new pension schemes a year. 2014, this year, we're expecting around about 30,000 pension schemes a year. 2015, we get further and further in, and the employers get smaller, but there's more of them. We're looking at about 46,000 pension schemes a year. Right then, are you ready? 2016, more than 500,000 pension schemes are expected. Okay, we've got 3 new pension providers. So essentially the pension industry is around the size it was, other than 3 new kids on the block. Is there going to be the number of pension schemes out there that we need? I'm not saying there isn't, I'm saying actually we don't know. And it's something that has been raised as an issue with the payroll profession, with the software, with the pensions industry themselves. We've sat in a room with the pensions regulator and said, what are we going to do? And really the answer is, don't know. So what we are saying is that the sooner that employers procure the pension, get the pension scheme in place, they can then sit back smugly with the feet up and not do anything then for a couple of years. They've got the important thing in place, because what we don't know, there might potentially be enough pension schemes. I'm not saying there's not. I'm saying naturally we don't know. But if there is, A, they might not be able to find one, and B, if they can, with any consumer demand-led industry, the more demand, the higher the price. And so it could be that, yes, they can get one, but they have to pay for it to get it. And so that's why we're saying don't sit around for 4 years, because by then it could be too late. And essentially we'll go from that, which was all peace and calm and light, up to October 2012. And we will have the pension tsunami. It's sort of commonly known now in the industry as the tsunami. And you can see it went up a lot from 3,000 to 30,000. 500,000, it's going to get swamped. And it is a huge concern, and it should be something that you need to be talking to your clients about and making them aware of. This is the other slide that I said we're not going to talk through now. But I would suggest that you look at that one after the event if you get time, and print the slide off, because there are lots of issues on there. You know, we've got pension schemes, that's an obvious one. But something that you might not have thought about, the refund process. So it's reminders for you, it's prompts for you to start having a look and thinking, once you've decided what level of support you are going to give to the employers, then you can start to work out where that line is and whose responsibility that refund process is going to be. Is it going to be the employers? Is it going to be yours? So you've got all these different items for you to think about and make sure that you've got addressed. One thing that's on there, pay reference period to use. You might have heard about the pay reference period being the most complicated thing known to man. And there was a huge lobby that went through to Steve Webb, the pensions minister, and thankfully he's a good guy who knows what he's doing, and he said, I hear you. So from last November he changed or gave an extra option for pay reference periods. So instead of the really complicated process that's in place, which is staying, so that those who've already staged can carry on doing exactly what they're doing, that's not a problem. But for new ones, they have the choice of having a pay reference period that matches the tax month or the tax week, which makes sense. However, what you need to just check is that the payroll software has that functionality, because some of the payroll softwares are saying, actually, as it stands at the minute, we have not been asked to provide tax months or tax weeks, so it's not included in our software. So don't just assume that the functionality is there, because it might not be. So double check. That goes back to your software that's on there. Make sure that it fits what it is that you're wanting to do. So we know that automatic enrolment all hangs on a worker's age and earnings. And so an assessment has to take place. And before the staging starts, that assessment needs to take place to determine the earnings of the workers and the age. All the workers who earn over £10,000 and are aged between 22 and state pension age, which of course is likely to be different depending on how far down the line you stage, they would all be classed as eligible job holders. Workers that earn between £5,772 and £10,000, they are non-eligible job holders, which means they're not eligible to join automatically. You don't have to automatically enrol them, but they can opt in, and if they do, then you have to enrol them and make contributions. And then you've got the entitled workers who earn less than £5,772. Those figures should look familiar to you because they're linked to the tax thresholds, and so they go up every year. There's no automatic link between these and the tax thresholds. So far they've always followed through, but you can't just assume that that's always going to happen. And what must the employer do? Eligible job holders, they must be automatically enrolled into a pension scheme. Even if you know full well that that worker has told you loads of times they don't want to be in it, hard lines, you have to automatically enrol them. And you have to make contributions on their behalf and deduct contributions. If they want to opt out, you've got to process that. But if they do, then you've got to re-enroll them 3 years down the line. And of course, you've got to keep records. Non-eligible job holders, they, as I've said before, that you don't have to automatically enrol them, but you have to tell them what their status is, and then they can choose to join in. And if they do, you have to make, well, you don't, your client, the employer, has to make contributions for them as well. Everything else remains the same as the eligible job holder. The entitled worker is a bit of a misnomer, really, because they're not entitled to a whole lot, really. The only thing that they are entitled to is they're entitled to request that you enrol them in a pension scheme. Doesn't have to be the same scheme as everybody else, and you don't have to make contributions for them. You can if you want, and you can enrol them in a super duper one if you want, but you don't have to. And that's the difference. And for everybody, no matter what their status is, you have to communicate with them. And there are certain statutory communications that you have to make, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Right, systems. And here, possibly everybody in the room will have to look at this in a different way, because depending on the level of involvement that you have with your clients, it might well be that you have to see whether your systems integrate with whatever HR system they use if they have one. It might be that you have to try and integrate with the pension scheme that they choose. And then in the middle of that, you've got the number crunching. Because what has to happen is that the employees, like I said, the age and earnings go through a number cruncher. Payroll software might do that, pension software might do that, or something called middleware might do that, which the clue's in the title, it's in the middle of the pensions and the payroll. That does the number crunching, goes back to payroll to say these are eligible, so you've got to run the payroll again to then deduct those pension contributions. And then the pensions need to go off to the pension company. If it's a weekly payroll, is there enough time in that system to allow for it going off, numbers crunched, back, payroll run again, and then off it goes? Weekly payroll, especially for middleware, could be tight. So it might be that it needs to be just payroll software that does it. It's for you guys to look to see what your requirements are and what the right software is going to be for you. Pensionable pay and qualifying earnings are not necessarily the same thing, depending on the scheme that you've got. So there's a decision that needs to be made by the employer, yes, but you may well need to make sure that the software works everything out properly. Postponement down here, it can be used for seasonal workers. You can choose to postpone automatic enrolment for up to 3 months. So if you've got somebody who works in a shop 2 evenings a week, never going to reach the minimum earnings for automatic enrolment, but come Christmas, they're working every single day of the week, that can take them over the spike, because you've got to keep assessing anyone who's not an eligible job holder. You've got to keep assessing them every pay period. The minute that they hit the relevant earnings criteria, you have to automatically enrol them, unless you choose to postpone. Because you could postpone for 3 months, by which time it's New Year, none of us have got any money, we're not in the shops, and then they don't have to be working every day of the week. They pass the postponement, and then the next time you assess them, their earnings are back down to normal again, and they don't need to be automatically enrolled. Something to think about. You can use postponement more than once, but what you can't do is put them back to back. So you can't postpone, and then when you come to assess again, oh lordy, they're still above the earnings criteria, I'll postpone again. No, you can't. If when you've postponed and that ends, if their earnings are above the criteria, you have to automatically enrol them. But you could do it again, say at Easter, when you've got everybody in, because you've had a gap, there have been non-eligible job holders in that time, and then you can use postponement again. You can have a gap, you just can't put it straight on. Opt-out process, who's going to manage that? Would that be you? Would it be the employer? Refunds. There was a misconception, that's the word I'm after, that said that everybody had to have at least one pension deduction taken from their salary so that they could feel what it felt like. That's not true. If the payroll system is quick enough or tight enough, potentially they can have all the communications, they can decide to opt out, it can come back, you can process the opt-out before they suffer a deduction. In reality, the chances of that happening are remote, and in which case you've taken a deduction and then you get the opt-out. So what do? Do you hang on to that contribution in case they opt out and then you can give them it straight back? Or do you send it to the pension company? And then the minute the employee opts out, they're entitled to a refund, regardless of whether that money's come back from the pension company yet or not. So it's something to be thought about. Yes, it's for the employer to decide, but potentially in conversation with you. We've talked about pension schemes. The hardest group of people to convince that they need to think about this now are those who already have a pension scheme. Because those who already have a pension scheme will be, well, I'm all right, I'm fine. Not necessarily. Just because you've got a pension scheme does not mean to say it's a qualifying pension scheme. If there's any barrier to joining that pension scheme, well then it's not a qualifying scheme for automatic enrolment. And by that, I mean something as simple as, if someone's got to serve a 3-month probation before they can join the pension scheme, that's not a qualifying scheme, because there can be no barrier. They have to be enrolled from day one. Now, you could use that scheme and tweak it and take out that criteria that says they have to serve a probation. If they have to do something as simple as sign a form to say they want to join the pension scheme, that also means that scheme is not a qualifying scheme. It's something that companies won't necessarily think about, and they could come up short right at the very end. Will it accept all your workforce? Back in October 2012, one of the big high street retail chains, has to be big, it was one of the first ones to stage, got everything in place, everything was sorted out, fine and dandy, till about just a few weeks before they were due to stage, and the pension company said, you do know, don't you, that we're not taking the staff in that work in the stores, we're only taking your head office staff, because it wasn't worth the pension company's while with all these low paid workers who were going to opt out anyway potentially. They would much rather have the regular monthly paid higher earners, more stable. And with just a few weeks to go, this chain had to go scurrying round trying to find a pension scheme that would take all the workforce. I think what they could have done, and very probably did, was keep the pension that they had for the workers that it would accept, and then use something like Nest or Now for the others, because you can have two different schemes. It doesn't have to be the same scheme for everybody, as long as they are qualifying. But it is definitely something that people need to watch out for. This applies equally to employers or yourselves. Do you have the resources to deal with automatic enrolment? CIPP research, only just recently published, showed that for automatic enrolment, the biggest cost for employers was the resource that they needed to prepare for automatic enrolment. They still needed a bit of extra resource afterwards once it was in place, but it was significantly increased for the preparation for automatic enrolment. Do those staff need training? That was another big cost, the training of staff, not just on automatic enrolment, but on the new software that they needed to operate it. And communications. You've more or less got letters to tell you about letters as far as automatic enrolment is concerned. The pensions regulator website has got templates so you know what they say, but who's going to take responsibility for writing the letters? Is it you as an agent? Is it the employer? Conversations need to be had, because those letters, you should be getting the message by now, those letters don't just stop at the staging date, because we keep on with those all the way through, more or less. It's very much an ongoing thing. Contractual enrolment into a pension scheme is acceptable, is allowable, but you need to be careful about it. Some people think that it's a way of making sure that they fulfil their obligations, and it is, as long as they're careful with it. You know, like I said, about the probation, for example, that kind of thing. Just watch out for it. Salary sacrifice, again, can be used for automatic enrolment, as long as it's not a condition. Some pension schemes say you can join, but you have to sacrifice some salary. That then becomes a barrier. And of course it could take people below the national minimum wage. So it can't be the only way of joining the pension scheme, and as long as it's not, it's fine. As a provider, what will you deliver for your clients? That is the big question. You need to be looking, what can your system do for you? How does it link up with all the other systems? Service level agreement, what are you going to offer your clients? Where is that dividing line between where their responsibility ends and yours starts? How easy is it going to be to get the information you need from your clients? I know I've sat with payroll bureaus who've shown me the scrappy little bits of paper that come in mid-month or 2 months later or whatever. That's not really going to help when it comes to automatic enrolment, when it's based on earnings criteria. Hard conversations are going to have to take place with clients, but whether they listen, don't know. We've talked about communications between pension providers, potentially, unless you're going to go a long way down the line for your clients, potentially your system might have to talk with goodness knows how many different pension providers. So, you know, can it do it? And it's something that you need to look at very carefully. And that one, time frame for collection, it definitely needs to be in that service level agreement. And the responsibility, where that responsibility lies, if you don't get the information in time so that someone isn't correctly automatically enrolled, The service level agreement needs to make that very, very clear where the responsibility for any non-compliance lies. So what could you do to help? We know that people have written to clients and nobody's listened. We know. All we can suggest is perhaps preparing a newsletter for clients. And if you do it on a regular basis, eventually they might start to think, what's this? I keep seeing this. Maybe I ought to read it. Potentially offering a free seminar, get quite a few in a room at a time and explaining automatic enrolment and what you will or won't do. If you are quite prepared to go somewhere down the line, produce a preliminary report showing what those costs might be to the client and potentially what the consequences to them might be, and I'll show you the consequences in a minute, if they don't comply, because they are eye-opening, to say the least. Make sure you keep up to date because things do change. We'll all be used to RTI and that changes every day sometimes. Automatic enrolment doesn't change as quickly as that, but it does still keep changing. So make sure you've got a channel for keeping up to date. We know that there are a lot of sharks out there and they are just going to be waiting to pounce on people who probably leave it too late and then in desperation are floundering around for anybody. What are the consequences of not complying? If you are going to write a newsletter or something for your clients, include this. The penalties range from £50 a day for the smallest employers up to £10,000 a day for the largest, most persistent non-compliance. And we get het up about RTI penalties, which aren't a patch on that. And we have heard people who say, I'm not going to do it. Well, fair enough, but this is potentially what will happen if you don't. And we do know the pensions regulator has been trying to find the persistent non-compliers so that they can set an example to show that for once they are going to start showing some teeth. I used to work for HMRC, and one of my jobs at HMRC way back in the day was updating the employer pages of the website, which means that I think I am in a pretty good position to start commenting on other government websites. The pensions regulator website is weird because it has the information that you need. You can find the information that you need, and most importantly of all, when you find it, you can actually understand the information that's on there. It's got to be a government website, so it's got to be a little bit weird. The employer guidance is split up into 11 books that are numbered 1 to 9, but leaving that bit aside, all the information is really, really good and really, really helpful. CIPP members or even non-members, in the little bags that you've got on there, you will see that we run courses. There is a self-assessment thing that you can go through or get your clients to go through that will show them how ready they are and what they need to do. Wherever you find the information, make sure you keep up to date is the most crucial thing that I would say. I've overrun a little bit, and I don't know where the lady with the mic is, but do we have any questions? Yeah, right, hang on, let me go find the lady with the mic. Excuse me, have we got the lady with the mic? She's coming back. Because otherwise we have a little problem. Which way would you like to go back? To the one with the websites? Right, they are available afterwards, so you can get those web addresses off there, but if you need to, that's absolutely fine, because they are all there. And that pension regulator website, you don't have to put in pensions regulator, just TPR in Google search will bring it up, so it's a much easier way of finding it. We have some questions.
Questions. So, okay, right. You put your hand up first. So there's a trick to this.
I've got to come too.
I have to put the microphone, but you need to talk loud so I can hear you. So.
Is your Sage payroll module, is that compatible with people's pension?
I don't work for Sage, I work for the Chartered Institute of Payroll Professionals, so I don't know the answer to that question. That was the right answer.
Can you give me the definition of the eligible pay? You know, the salary, because I'm very confused about it.
Right. The salary for an eligible job holder is between 5,000...
Sorry, the salaries, you know, that they pay, there are different... it's not the amount of money they earn, but for example, for people they earn different amounts of money, like commission plus salary.
Right, so you mean in the pensionable pay versus the qualifying earnings?
That one, sorry.
Right. There are different, it's going to depend on the pension scheme that is chosen, because automatic enrolment works on qualifying earnings, and there are the basic ones that are in there. So bonuses, overtime, maternity pay, all those kinds of things class as qualifying earnings. But pensionable pay might have different elements. And the crucial part of it is there are 3 different tiers for pensionable pay. And you know, you've heard about employers have to make a contribution, and it might be 1%, 3%, 4% or 5%. That's going to depend on the amount of pensionable, amount of earnings that are pensionable. So for those pension schemes where all earnings are pensionable, then the employer contribution is only going to be 1%. For those pension schemes where the pensionable earnings are up to 85% of earnings, then the employer contribution is 2%. And for less, that's where the employer, and most people are going to be in that, less than 85, then the employer contribution is 3%. But you need to, I can't just tell you which that pension scheme is going to be. You need to look at the scheme rules and work out which one it comes into. That's if it's not one of the standard now Nest or People's Pension, which are geared up specifically for automatic enrolment. So just look at those qualifying earnings. I'm coming. If you're wondering what I'm doing, it's so I can hear this lady, because I can't hear it through my ears.
We have quite a lot of director-type payrolls where there's literally just one person with their own limited company, so it's literally just one person in the payroll. Would they have to auto-enroll? Is that still counted as one employee?
Just one director?
Just one.
No. 2 directors? Yes. And I have been talking to quite a few accountants who are always savvy and are always looking for opportunities, and some of them have been looking to see, well, we've got one director and potentially the wife might be a director, and they're thinking this might be a good opportunity to maybe see about going down the employment allowance, where you get up to £2,000 back of the employer NIC. And so whilst, yes, specifically just the one director, you wouldn't do it. For anything else, it would be worth just sitting and having a look and seeing whether the trauma of going through this might be worthwhile. Just explore the different opportunities.